Hey, Beasties here, and welcome to week 6 of Dungeons and Dragonites and TGR. We are currently 4-1, and with a win here, we will lock up our playoff spot, which is really exciting. So hopefully we can get the win here. So my opponent has a Terra Ground Ambipom and a Terra Electric Vikavolt. Fun fact: their Vikavolt is actually picked up because I dropped it when I promoted. My Vikavolt, I think, got promoted into the Iron Valiant, which is not on this team, but on my other team, which we'll see in Game 2. So here I want to prevent them from setting up screens early and or possibly setting up like a trick room with a Slow King. And so I like to bring the Iron Hands, which has Fake Out, but also Brick Break to break screens. I decided to lead Rotom because Rotom looks really good offensively and honestly defensively into pretty much everything other than the Chandelure. And if they do lead Chandelure, I can Terra Dark and then Dark Pulse and possibly be able to deal with the Chandelure. So with that, let's get into the game. So they end up leading Vikavolt and Ambipom, and I lead the Iron Hands of Rotom. So obviously I would like to just fake out the Vikavolt since it's the biggest threat. And if they happen to fake out my Rotom, Iron Hands will be able to pick out Vikavolt, and we just kind of have a moot turn. Here I decided I just want to go for the Blizzard, get a good chunk of damage into both of these if I can. Like obviously I could go for Electroweb, but I am Scarf, so I do outspeed them. They end up getting a Quick Claw Puck and faking out. This is really funny because the last time I used Vikavolt, I also had a Quick Claw, which is pretty good. However, the Quick Claw ended up not mattering because I didn't kill him with the Blizzard. And they get sticky webs up, which is going to be really annoying since I don't have a great way to, or I have no way to get rid of it. And that speed control can be very annoying for my team as a whole. So here, the big question is like, do I just want to go for another Blizzard, try to get the second kill, or do I want to switch out and try to get any damage? And I can definitely see an argument for, keeping it in, but I decided to switch out Magnezone because I'm expecting to take an attack into that spot, and if I happen to get hit by a move, I could get the Custap Berry activated. I think this is a pretty clean, switch in, especially for most of the possible damage. We get the Blizzard, just barely misses out onto the Vikavolt, and then they get a crit with the Bug Buzz, which Rotom 100% does not die without that crit, so the crit was really sad. I decide that there's really no option other than Iron Leaves because I don't want to get the speed drop, and with the Clear Amulet I can't get the speed drop from the sticky webs. And so here I consider Terroring, but I think it's fine to just keep it, save the Terra for later. However, I honestly maybe should have Terra'd given the fact that they are Terra Ground on their Ambipom and they might go for a ground move. And so I decide that I'm just going to go for the kill onto that with the Psyblade because I think it's the most reasonable Pokemon they might switch in, and they end up going for a Terra Ground on their Ambipom. So they end up protecting the Vikavolt, so maybe I should have switched out my my targeting. However, I felt the need to target the Vikavolt because Bug Buzz does kill my Iron Leaves. So they get me down to Sturdy, which is somewhat annoying. However, the Flash Cannon does kill Ambipom, and I'm going to be able to get a Custap Berry activated, which means my Magnezone will go first next turn unless they get a Quick Claw Park on their Vikavolt. So here I decide I'm just going to go for the kill onto the Vikavolt. I decided to go for a Terra Blast here, which I think ends up being a really dumb decision. I probably should have just gone for the Flash Cannon, or in case they switched in. Flash Cannon is the best move because their only switch into it is Chandelure and is going to kill Vikavolt no matter what. I just go for the Throat Chop to kill Chandelure. We get the Custap Berry, which means we're going to attack first. They switch out the Vikavolt into a Grimmsnarl, so the Flash Cannon would have done mass damage, possibly even killed if it's not specifically especially bulky. However, we get a fairly neutral move, and the T-Wave double connects and crits Iron Leaves, which is massive because Throat Chop possibly kills, if not it does massive damage. And with that Scarf, they also reveal that they're Scarf. So definitely really sad that 2 crits that one-shot 2 of my really important mons that both were EV trained not to die to moves like that is definitely quite annoying. And so here we bring out the Iron Hands and the Kill Watcher. They're really the only ones that can come in without taking big hits. I decided to go for the Brick Break or Fake Out into the Grimmsnarl to try to prevent it from getting up a screen, and then try to get a Hurricane off into the Chandelure to just maybe kill it if I get a crit, or maybe confuse it. They decided to switch out Chandelure, which I'm not 100% sure of their decision behind that. We get the Fake Out, which means Grimmsnarl doesn't move, and they did go for a move, and we get the Hurricane off, which honestly does not do nearly as much into Slowking as I would like. So here I decided to just go for the double up into the Grimmsnarl, trying to kill the Grimmsnarl with a Brick Break and a Thunderbolt, which should kill it and should deal with it even if it sets up a screen here, which I'm assuming is the most likely situation. They set up the Reflect, which, like I said, this double up will kill. Maybe I should have targeted the thing. They end up going for a Icy Wind, which doesn't do much damage, but it does activate my competitive, which means my Kill Watcher has now doubled its special attack, and they have no screens and Grimmsnarl's gone. So we definitely have some outs. However, obviously one of the big downsides of this specific position is that Chandelure with Scarf is going to be pretty annoying. So here I decide I'm just going to go for the Stomping Tantrum into the Chandelure and the Protect. I maybe should have considered it more to go for just a Hurricane, because a +2 Hurricane might kill Chandelure, because I'm assuming they're going for a Shadow Ball into the Kill Watcher here. However, I should take that attack, and we see that Psychic does a chunk of damage, and I get the special defense boost, which means I'm almost certainly not going to survive another attack. So maybe I should have switched out because of that. However, I decided to stay in case they decide to like double up into the Kill Watcher. But I definitely think that it was probably a dumb move to stay in here, because they outspeed and they obviously kill me, and which, if I don't have the special defense to drew up, I might be able to take. So we just go for the Thunderbolt into the Chandelure, which kills it from its health. But like I said, maybe I should have just been attacking the Slowking with the Iron Hands instead of getting that little chip, because maybe +2 Thunderbolt or +2 Hurricane would have killed the Chandelure earlier. So we bring out the Sandy Shocks, in which we could possibly have some chance if the speed boost happened from boost energy before, but because Sticky Webs activates first, I get a special attack boost, which means I am not faster than Garchomp, and now I should probably can just die from like an Earthquake from Garchomp from that. I decided to just go for the Hurricane, and they end up Breaking Swipes, which kills the Kill Watcher, which now I don't really see too many ways to get out of it. We do have the special attack boost, but it doesn't get the kill, and the Psychic brings me low enough in which Garchomp's going to be able to finish me off with a Breaking Swipe. This game ended up going a little bit sad. I think there's a couple decision points that could have made it a lot better and were definitely mistakes on my end. Namely, I could have I should have flash canned with the Magnezone. I should have probably just tried to kill the Chandelure with a Hurricane rather than hitting it with the Iron Hands. I probably should have switched Iron Hands out and saved the Fake Out for later. However, I also got a little bit unlucky with the two big crits that gave them one-hit KOs. So, definitely some mistakes on my end. However, also a little bit of unluckiness. So with that, let's get to game 2. So here for game 2, and they have their snow mode and NDD for terrain. So this is definitely a little bit tricky. I'm not sure what I want to lead the best. However, I do probably want to lead something that can possibly deal with their snow mode. And I think Iron Valiant is a good option because it does have Wide Guard in order to deal with like icy winds and blizzards, and then one of the rock Pokemon makes a lot of sense in order to threaten both of those for big chunks of damage. I decided to lead Iron Thorns because Iron Thorns does a little bit more damage because of the Choice Band and its higher special attack, and Brick Breaking can also help deal with the possibility of Aurora Bell. So they end up leading Scrafty Ninetales into my Iron Thorns and Iron Valiant. They get the snow up, and they intimidate my Iron Thorns, which is somewhat annoying. The intimidate and Iron Valiant technically does something, but I don't really care too much. I decide to go for the Moonblast, which will kill Scrafty if they don't switch out. And I'm debating between Terrain, and I decide I don't really need a Terra because if they fake out, I'm not going to be hit with a fighting move, and if they don't fake out, Moonblast will just kill. I decide to just go for the Brick Break into the Ninetales to break an Aurora Bell if they do set it up. We get the Moonblast, one-shot the Scrafty, and they get an Aurora Bell here, which, is somewhat expected. We have both Pokemon on my team do have Brick Break, which both of them can get rid of the Aurora Bell, but we just need to, be able to hit it. So they bring out the Iron Bundle, and so here I decide to go for the read that they're going to go for Icy Wind and or Blizzard, and I decide to Terra and go for a Brick Break, because if they don't go for an Icy Wind or a Blizzard, they most likely are going to go for a Hydro Pump into the Iron Thorns, which now I should be able to take a Blizzard or a Hydro Pump. So we end up going for the Wide Guard and the Brick Break. They protect the Iron Bundle, which I was not expecting there. However, they just go for an Icy Wind, which makes sense. They want to be able to make sure to get a speed control. However, this in turns ends up being somewhat moot. So here I'm expecting them to read that I might go for a Wide Guard and not go for a Blizzard and just go for the Hydro Pump into the Iron Thorns. I decided to just go for the Moonblast into the Iron Bundle and the Brick Break. They didn't show that they have a booster speed here, and this is what and so I think that they're likely have a Sash, so I'm going to go for the double up into the Iron Bundle. They end up not showing Sash. However, my Iron Thorns takes 2 hits and breaks the strings and kills the Iron Bundle, which is really big here. And so pretty happy that they're down the down both 2 Pokemon and don't have screens up in our first 2 turns. So here I decide I'm just going to go for Moonbands into Ninetales, and the big question is, what do I want to switch out into? I don't really want to switch out Rotom because they might do a grass move into that spot, so I decided to switch in Pincurchin because getting the electric terrain could be really good at getting mixture, in general, and also Pincurchin taking a move so that I can switch in something else from the back is also very useful with the eject button. They end up going for Protect on Sceptile, which is completely fine since I targeted the Ninetales. We get the Moonblast on the Ninetales, does just over 50%. We take a very small damage with the Pincurchin, and we get a switch it out, which means we get the free electric terrain. And I decide to just bring in the Iron Jugulus, since I think Iron Jugulus seems pretty good into the Sceptile. And with the Quark Drive, we get a special attack boost with Iron Jugulus instead of a speed boost because of the way in which I EV spread. I decided to just go for the Moonblast into the Ninetales, trying to get the kill. And I decided, debating between Snarl and Air Slash, I decided to go for Air Slash into the Sceptile because I think it should do a pretty good chunk of damage. They switch out the Sceptile, which I honestly was not expecting, into a Skarmory, and they protect the Ninetales. So they're definitely playing very defensively with all their situations, but that's probably something I should or could be playing around. The Air Slash does okay damage, not great. This is the last turn of Snow, and they end up revealing leftovers on their Skarmory. So here, I'm not the most concerned with Skarmory because I do have quite a few special attackers, and so I am probably more concerned with the Ninetales. So I decided to just go for the Moonblast into that spot, and I consider the Tailwind or the Snarl, and I decided to set up Tailwind in case Skarmory sets up Tailwind because I don't want them to be able to just set up Tailwind and then outspeed me next turn. They end up switching into the NDD, which I wasn't quite expecting. We lose our booster energy, and we get the Moonblast, which does an okay damage, and we get the Tailwind up, which means now we are going to outspeed. And they go for an Iron Defense, which at this point I'm not particularly concerned with because I do have a fair amount of special attackers, including 2 special attackers in play. And I have the Rotom in the back and the Pincurchin in the back, which both are also special electric coverage. And so here I really want to go for the Shadow Ball into the Skarmory because I don't care about NDD, but I kind of am forced to go for a Moonblast in case they follow me, and I go for the Snarl. They end up protecting the NDD, which definitely was not expecting there, because if I just go for the Shadow Ball and Snarl, I'm in really good shape. However, I just go for the Snarl and the Moonblast. I definitely should have also Moonblast Skarmory even with that expectation. They go for the Body Press, which luckily is not a kill from this range. And so I really want to go for the Moonblast. However, I was going to go for the Shadow Ball, so I'm not resisted. However, I do not want them to be able to wide guard. I go for the Moonblast again into NDD. However, I do think I need to be targeting this Skarmory instead. However, I did not. They get the Snow back up, which doesn't really matter, but they're basically just sacking their Ninetales in order to save NDD for later so that I don't get my Electric Terrain up. We get the Snarl, which does okay damage, and they get a second Iron Defense up, which makes sense since they know they weren't going to kill the Iron Jugulus with the second attack, and so they want to be able to get a third attack up. So they end up bringing out the Sceptile, which, as we would expect, has Psychic Seed, so now they have this special defense boost and they're unburdened. However, we do have Tailwind up, so they're not going to be able to Tailwind us. I don't care about Sceptile right now, so I'm going to just be trying to deal with the Skarmory and just go for Snarl. Snarl can reduce the damage of the Sceptile. They reveal that they Terra flying. Given that they were Terra flying, I probably should have expected that they were going to be physical. However, like I said, I'm mainly focused on the Skarmory, which is somewhat annoying. We outspeed because of the Tailwind, and we go down to Sash because of, with the acrobatics here. We get a Snarl off, which Skarmory is now pretty low. However, they end up revealing or killing off the Iron Jugulus here. And so this is definitely a little bit of an awkward position. We somewhat feel the need to bring something that can outspeed and kill Skarmory here. And at this point, I consider the Rotom. I consider the the Iron Boulder. Obviously, the downside is Iron Boulder can't kill. I bring in Pincurchin, which I think is probably somewhat of a mistake. The idea behind this was I think I should be able to take an attack from the Skarmory and kill it with the Thunderbolt. However, I do just die here. I think another part of this was also trying to get the terrain up so that Rotom can get its physical boost stat. They protect the Sceptile, which definitely I go for the Shadow Ball, don't get the kill. They go for the Roost, and I ended up targeting the Sceptile. I don't like this targeting. I feel like I probably should have targeted Skarmory, or Pincurchin should have targeted Skarmory, because I don't actually care about the Sceptile. However, at this point, there's not much we can do except kind of accept that Iron Valiant's going to die, or try to switch in and hope that we get something good with the Rotom. They end up switching an NDD, meaning I can't get the defense boost with the Rotom like I was hoping, and we end up saving Iron Valiant, which will be really useful later because it will outspeed everything, especially since Sceptile switched out, which means that no longer is going to get the boost. We luckily are able to get Thunderbolt, but because they switch in Rotom, or NDD, the Thunderbolt doesn't get the kill, and we go for the double up into the Skarmory with Thunderbolt, and actually we just go for the Thunderbolt. We expect there's probably a good chance that they're going to follow me to save the Skarmory here, and I decided to switch in the Iron Thorns in order to reset Electric Terrain in the future. They do follow me as expected. However, sadly, the Thunderbolt into the NDD does not get the kill, and they get a Prody Press, killing the Rotom. I'm very surprised they didn't go for a Roost here. I think a Roost here might have just won them the game. However, we do outspeed, where we have a chance to outspeed their Skarmory with their Iron Thorns, and so we bring out the Iron Valiant, which outspeeds both of these, and Iron Thorns has a chance to outspeed. I want to be able to Shadow Ball to kill this Skarmory, but I decided to go for the Moonblast in the Skarmory, and I decided to go for the Rock Slide, which hopefully, if we do outspeed the Skarmory, we can get the double knockout. They end up not going for Follow Me. The Moonblast gets the kill. NDD ends up going for a Heal Pulse, which is definitely very greedy there. And the Rock Slide gets the kill. And we are able to do a Skarmory, and this game is over. If they had went for the Roost that turn that the previous 2 turns ago, I think they might have been able to get there, because I don't think there was a way for me to break through that Skarmory. However, at this point, we were able to win the game, and we definitely got a little bit lucky to be able to break through them, but definitely a stressful end game there. Skarmory did a lot more work than I was expecting it to, especially given the fact that I have 3 special electric mons in electric terrain, in addition to having multiple other electric mons that were physical. So we are successfully get to game 3. We're 1-1. I have no idea which Poke team I want to bring for game 3. However, as per usual, I guess you might as well just bring the team that won. And also, it's the team that has Pincurchin, and so might as well bring the Pincurchin team because Pincurchin's the captain. And so with that, let's get to game 3. Well, my opponent ends up bringing the team they brought game 1, round 1, which makes sense. In preparation for the possibility of them bringing the exact same lead in Vikavolt and Ambipom, I decide I want to lead Iron Boulder because it has Covert Cloak and threatens super effective damage onto the Vikavolt. And I also want to bring Iron Thorns because it outspeeds and also can threaten to one-shot Vikavolt. And so I like the idea of these two, and I think they threaten the lead that they brought in game 1. And so they end up bringing the exact same lead they brought in game 1. And so I am here hoping that they fake out the Iron Boulder. If they do, I feel amazingly. I go for a Rock Slide and a Mighty Cleave, and I don't feel the need to Terra here because I'm expecting a fake out and not like a Terra Ground, Terra Blast into the Iron Thorns. They go for the fake out into Iron Boulder, which is perfect. We successfully get it. However, they take the Mighty Cleave. However, I am faster. We get the Rock Slide off. So definitely an amazing turn 1. We take a tiny bit of damage. We kill Vikavolt. We prevent the sticky webs, which was the major thing that hurt me game 1. And then we go here for Protect. I think I really want to bring in Iron Jugulus or Rotom in order to be immune to a ground move. I decided I want to bring in Pincurchin instead because I want to get the electric terrain up, because I think electric terrain will be really useful at getting my speed boost and the damage boost, especially for the possibility of Scarf Chandelure in the back. They end up tearing their Ambipom into Terra Ground. I'm assuming they're going to go for a Terra Blast, maybe into my Pincurchin. We'll see. I end up protecting the Boulder, and they go for the Terra Blast into my Iron Boulder, which means my Protect was great. They end up going for Breaking Swipes instead of a ground move, which is really nice because Pincurchin doesn't take that much damage, and we get the free switch out with the eject button. And so I'm very happy because now we can bring in Iron Valiant, which threatens to possibly one-hit KO the Garchomp with Moonblast. And Iron Boulder does outspeed anything on their team and threatens the Ambipom. And we have both of my Pokemon have the speed boost, and so both of these will outspeed a Scarf Chandelure as well. And so the big question is, what is the possible switch in? And they do have Slowking as a possible switch in to Moonblast, and I decided to just go for the Rock move into Ambipom and the Moonblast into that. They end up going for the Grimmsnarl, which means I'll do a pretty good chunk of damage into it, and the Garchomp ends up being switched out into a Chandelure, which is a pretty good switch into the Moonblast. Obviously, I could have read this, but I wasn't really expecting a double switch because that's such a passive play. We get pretty reasonable chunk of damage to both of these. I decide to go for the Mighty Cleave into the Chandelure and the Moonblast into the Grimmsnarl. I believe this should kill both of these, even through a Reflect or a Light Screen. However, I did not expect Misty Terrain. Probably should have expected it to some extent because obviously they, probably playing around my terrain to some extent. Because of that, I lose my speed boost. However, luckily for me, Boulder does take the Shadow Ball, and we get the Moonblast, kill Grimmsnarl, and we get the Mighty Cleave and kill Chandelure, putting us in an amazing position. Yeah, and so I'm feeling really good about my spot now, especially because now they don't really have a way to deal with the terrain. So they bring out Garchomp and the Ambipom. I decided to go for a Protect on the boulder here, and I want to switch in Pincurchin just to get the electric terrain back up, get the speed boost, make sure they don't have anything way to kind of deal with my shenanigans. And Pincurchin, if it doesn't die, I can Sucker Punch. I decided to go for a Brick Break instead. I don't know why I didn't just go for Protect here. I feel like Protect was a lot better of a play. Maybe there's a reason for it, but I cannot think of a reason why I didn't just go for the Protect here, because they end up going for Protect on Ambipom themselves, which means that I am in a position where my Iron Boulder can just die for no reason. Definitely a questionable decision because they just go for the Earthquake, get the double knockout. This was a really bad play on my side. I should have, I think Pincurchin switch in was fine. I 100% should have protected Iron Boulder. There was no reason to make that attack, because if Pincurchin dies, then we can bring in the Iron Valiant, and then we can threaten both of them next turn with the speed boosts. But here we now bring in Iron Valiant, which threatens the Garchomp with Moonblast, and we bring in the Rotom, which gets the defense boost, which I'm very happy with. And so, somewhat annoying that I now don't have two Pokemon that outspeed Ambipom. However, Moonblast, and in addition to that, I have to risk a Hydro Pump miss. However, you have the obvious play of Moonblast and Hydro Pump into these two Pokemon, in which they do in fact switch to Slowking, which Moonblast does not do much damage. However, we get the special attack drop, which is pretty big. They go for the Terra Blast, which does okay damage, but definitely enough in which a Psychic from Slowking will kill my Iron Valiant. So at this point, I'm pretty positive that Garchomp has no Protect. In addition, I think it has its choice banded based on some of the damage calcs and the fact that it switched out. And so I'm just going to go for the Moonblast, which might kill, and if it doesn't, the Hydro Pump will definitely finish it off, because I'm sure the Pokemon I have back will be able to deal with the Slowking, specifically given that I have Iron Valiant, or Iron Jugulus, which 100% deals with it. We do in fact one-shot the Garchomp with Moonblast. We missed the Hydro Pump, but it's not too big of a deal. And now this game is completely over. They're down to one Pokemon. We have Iron Jugulus in the back, which is specifically designed to deal with special attackers. And I'm debating between just setting up Light Screen, but I decided to just go for the double up with Shadow Ball and Thunderbolt. Shadow Ball does a chunk of damage and drops the special defense, and Thunderbolt just misses out on the KO with that special defense drop. They were able to kill the Iron Valiant. However, at this point, the game is guaranteed over with just Rotom doing Thunderbolt. The big question is, do I want to try to give one of these Pokemon a kill? I decided to bring out Iron Thorns because I like Iron Thorns. However, Rotom's going to outspeed my Iron Thorns and get the kill here. And with that, we win week 6, our 5-1. I think we're tied for first place, or in record, maybe first overall in general. It was really good, exciting game. This was a lot closer than I was expecting, and they had some really nice prep with the Sticky Web, and the Skarmory ended up being a lot more scary than I was expecting. Game 2, I definitely got lucky with their fake out choice, in which if they got Sticky Webs up, that game might have been a lot different. But I was definitely really happy with this game. And with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.